Alright, so I recently played through some Everybody's Golf 2. Series was also previously known as Hot Shots Golf in some regions. And even just a couple months ago, I would have never have thought that I would be playing through a golfing game. But here we are. What led me here? Yakuza 3, but I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So, growing up, I did have Mario Golf Toadstool Tour on GameCube. And I remember disliking the game for two reasons. One, honestly, I did think it was kind of boring. And two, I don't know how many of you have seen the opening cutscene for that game, but there's a scene where Waluigi, he's so close to getting the ball in the hole and he keeps overshooting, undershooting, getting really frustrated. That was essentially my skill level, just like Waluigi, with a similar reaction. It wasn't fun to be so far behind because you fucked up one hole really bad to where it seems impossible to catch up to try to win, even if you do get a couple good holes in. Which, on a side note, was a pleasant surprise about this game, because I was expecting that again, but this game, it's sort of hole by hole, whoever, at least in versus mode, does better, gets a point for that hole, and you start out fresh on the next one. But yeah, fast forward to relatively recently, and I've been playing through Yakuza 3. We'll also hopefully have a video up about that eventually. But there was a mission where you had to play the golfing sub game, and it was actually not that bad. Kind of reminds me of when I was playing another game from kind of the same studio, Super Monkey Ball 2, and I didn't have high expectations for the billiards mini game, but in both these cases, they exceeded my expectations. And the one thing I think really helped was the fact that they had a mulligan system, which is essentially save states. So then I had the realization, well, maybe I should give one of these games another shot. But, back up my copy so I can play it on an emulator and have access to save states. I wanted to go with Mario Golf, but I forget. I think it was the GBA one, the 3DS one, and the new one that I particularly looked at, and they were all at least $20-$30. And for a game that I'm on the fence still a little bit, not really sure if I'm going to wind up liking it, that's a bit of an investment. But then I eventually found Everybody's Golf on PSN for $6, which is definitely a lot better. I guess I could have gotten one of the PSP ones cheaper, but I wasn't sure if things got weird or anything with a portable entry that may not have necessarily been mainline. Plus, I wasn't sure if they had any fun guests in it, which is kind of a highlight of this series. This one had Sweet Tooth, Sir Dan, and Gex. Unfortunately, I'm only going to wind up really playing through half the game, and I was kind of saving these characters, the best for last, so I only wound up playing as Sweet Tooth, which you see right here. This game isn't specifically made by Camelot, but there is actually a connection to Camelot, because the first one was made by them, and could have potentially been a big reason why, they would eventually work with Nintendo to make Mario Golf and Tennis. I don't know what sort of approach Sony may have made after Camelot left, if they were able to use the base they set up with the first Everybody's Golf game, if they had to build something from scratch, if they wanted to have it be close or different to that sort of ideal Camelot experience that I wanted, but figured it was good enough, at least still a casual golf game. And once again, for a much better price tag. Except it was a little bit of a pain in the ass to figure out how to back up the game from my Vita and convert it to be able to use on a PS1 emulator, but it was a fun challenge. Initially, though, I was having fun with the game. I think there's 6 or 7 main courses and, 18 holes each. And at one point, I just sort of snapped. I don't really know why. I just sort of realized, wait, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. You're angling the ball based on where the course and wind are, and then you're trying to time your hits within the meter perfectly so the shot goes through well. And yes, I mean, some of the courses have slightly different themes, and the layouts are different and the wind changes, but it's just kind of the same thing over and over and over again. And, maybe I did make it too easy on myself and forgiving for using save states when I fuck up, but thinking about it, unless you really want to put in a lot of time to, get better and not make mistakes, even if you make a mistake, it's the same process to get out of it. Except now you're down a point in your score or your competition against someone else because the ball wasn't able to travel as ideally far. And I don't know, the only thing I can really think of to fix that is to maybe add that Mario touch. But then I even thought, okay, you do that. What is the benefit of that? Perhaps more interesting, diverse locations, but it's like they're probably pulled from other games. And maybe there'll be certain hazards or items, but what's ultimately going to really happen with that? The only thing I can think of is like if you have like a pendulum going back and forth. I think that's what they're called. And you sort of have to time your shots so that, the ball goes past it and doesn't get stuck in it. Or maybe there'll be like different hazards in that, but besides one that might involve timing, isn't it kind of the same thing as getting caught in a sand trap? I don't know. This just isn't for me. I will say the concept of speed golf is kind of interesting that the new Mario Golf game had. But even with that, I feel like a big part of golf is getting that precision, taking your time, and that sort of defeats the purpose. I mean, even then, what do they do? Do they just sort of automatically set you for the ultimate shot that you can take? And then at that point, wouldn't it just sort of be like a platformer where you're just going to point A to point B? A more linear one that you can probably find a better dedicated game for if you wanted that sort of gameplay. I guess maybe it could be a fun side activity to take a break from, the normal shit, but I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think that maybe if this game only had 1 or 2 courses, I would have left feeling decently satisfied, maybe have taken that investment in a Mario Golf game. But then, like I said, it just kept going and going, and I mean, at that point, like, it would only be a 1 or 2 hour long game, which isn't a lot. So I guess overall for me, this is better suited for a Yakuza side game or whatever other game, mini game. Especially Yakuza, though, because I know sometimes they'll switch up mechanics and controls to keep things fresh with some of their sub games throughout the series that return. But overall, yeah, I guess I don't regret giving it another shot, but it just didn't work out.